myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
You had one job, Rafe, to press the right music, and you didn't even do that. That's good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Rafe. It is Geordies here, Geordies there, and this is because it's a pre-recorded show. I've just clicked the one that I've just pressed for the fans forum. It's all too technical for you people out there. Anyway, we'll move on with the show. We're doing this on a Tuesday night because it's a Champions League night. Champions League special. I wanted to get the lads on to get their views on the group of death. Again, just a little bit of a refresher as to who we're going to be playing. Chat about the game, obviously, which is taking place tonight in the San Siro. Then to Steve, good evening to Mitch, good evening to Stu, and to George. Steve, boys. Because the guys have already had their chat and they've already had a chance to review the game against Brentford. You haven't, so just give us your views on the Brentford match, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting game. I thought we started off very, very slowly. Whether or not it was just a hangover from the previous game, but we didn't seem to be at our fluid, normal self. Obviously, the changes that he made were supposed to be positive changes, but it was one of those days. The atmosphere was weird. The weather was absolutely atrocious. But the weather was horrible. The atmosphere just seemed rather flat, and I think that reflected in the first 20 minutes of the way Newcastle played. Very, very lackluster. Brentford came at us a little bit. They looked a little bit more resourceful. They looked a little bit faster at the ball. But the longer the game went on, after the first 20 minutes, I thought we started to get into the game. I thought Bruno started to take command in the midfield. He started to start moving the ball around a little bit better. I thought that having Longstaff alongside him, the longer the game went on, the better that partnership worked. And I've always said that they seemed to get on really, really well. And for me, that was reflected right way through the game. And I think that the key to it was the way that Anthony Gordon and Barnes started to get a little bit more of the ball and to move down the wings and start to spread the game around. I thought when we came out in the second half, we were a totally different team. It was though that the fact that they'd survived 45 minutes without conceding a goal, and whether that buoyed them, I'm not too sure. You just don't know with professional footballers these days. So, it can be a confidence thing. It could be people carrying injuries. There's all sorts of excuses that can be laid at a player's feet. But I thought we came out in the second half with a slightly different attitude, a little bit more buoyant. And I thought we got what just desserts because, quite frankly, other than one or two sort of minor efforts, Brentford didn't really test Pope at all in the second half. And when they did, he stood up. And the very fact that we finished the game 1-0, we saw the game out. The referee had one of those games that he should be wanting to forget. And I listened the other day to I think it was Dermot Gallagher who was saying that everything the referee did was absolutely spot on, and he watches a totally different game to everybody else, but he does that every week anyway whenever he's on the TV. And I thought that at the end of it, we came out with what we deserved, which was the 3 points. And as I suppose that one of the big benefits and the big pluses was a clean sheet. I heard the guys the other night on the professionals talking about that, and I couldn't agree more. Absolutely delighted, and I'm sure Howell would be delighted as much as Pope would be delighted to have a clean sheet. First time in quite a few games. So all in all, I thought 6 points in the bag, well, probably where we should be, and certainly where we were last season against the same team. So nothing to worry about. And then going into the Champions League game tonight, absolutely, full of confidence. Hopefully, different competition, and the lads have gone there on the back of a win.
Just finishing up on the Brentford game, Steve, did it surprise you how little coverage the disallowed goal that Callum Wilson scored got? Because they were more interested in what they called the contentious issue of a penalty that shouldn't have been given. Shearer, of course, on Match of the Day said, he stuck his leg out and that was that. Alan, you would have done the same, mate. But, but the disallowed goal didn't seem to get much coverage. Match of the Day completely airbrushed it out of the coverage. I just thought that was weird.
So did I airbrush it out after half a dozen pints before the match with Keith and John, and quite a few afterwards as well. So I think quite a few Newcastle fans airbrushed it out of their mind. But what I found interesting was that on Sky, when Gallagher was doing his roundup, he suddenly found an issue with the arm of Callum Wilson, as though Callum Wilson had moved his arm to pull it down to get in the way and fouled the goalkeeper. Well, quite frankly, the goalkeeper came out. The goalkeeper was, he barely jumped 6 inches off the ground. He ran into Wilson, and Wilson was going for the ball, and he was jumping, and his arms are going up. It wasn't a case of him standing there and thinking, I'll yank the keeper down to give me an advantage. This is what happens, isn't it? I mean, VAR was very much in front of everybody's mind after some of the decisions in the last round of games, and this time it was a case of let's make sure everything that the referees have done is correct. And we've said it for months and months now that football's corrupt with a small c when it comes to some of these decisions that get made. And yet again, Newcastle were on the end of some very, very dubious refereeing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to a question which was pinned under the professional show the other night, and it was from Craig Lee, and I discussed this on the fans forum. So forgive me, George, because it's a question you've already been asked. But question for the panel about VAR and referees. On Saturday, a Brentford player went down holding his head whilst we were attacking, and we had the ball. The ref stopped the game as per rules. Head injury. The replay showed no one touched him or was anywhere near his face or head. Now, this is time wasting and the way players are stopping attacks or goals. Should VAR inform the referee and the opposition receive a free kick or penalty and the player a yellow card or a red card? This trend shows the players will always find a way to bend the rules. So this was during the game, Steve. I'm sure you've seen it. A flailing arm out, a finger clipping somebody's chin. Suddenly the guy goes down. We've seen it time and time again, clutching his face, ends up on the floor. You think the sniper's got him, and suddenly an attack stopped, and the referee has got no option. He's got to stop play. No one's punished for it. All it does is stop Newcastle attacking. So I guess what Craig's saying is, should VAR, I mean, God, they've got enough on that they need to get right. We're asking them to add something else. But in an ideal world, if VAR becomes a lot better than it is already, do you think that would be a good thing, Craig, saying to add those kind of incidents to maybe the VAR's jurisdiction?
Well, I tell you what, it's something that the Sheffield United manager was screaming an awful lot about, wasn't he?
Yeah, Paul Higginbottom,
Paul Higginbottom, yeah, and quite rightly, some of the comments that he made, I thought that they had an awful lot of legs on them. Yeah, I mean, if a player's, time wasting is one of these things that the Premier League has said they're going to stamp down on. And if that's the case, then it's got to work both ways. And as Higginbottom said, referees who delay games, referees who then, end up having 3, 4, 5 minutes added on because they keep coming over to talk to people about what's going on, all that type of thing. But in that situation, Steve, on Saturday, what actually happened was the ball went back to our defenders, and we then started off and attack. The players lying there, the referee didn't want to know about the decision, didn't want to make a decision, was quite happy for the play to carry on. And then once we got over the halfway line, at that point, the referee said, "Oh, hang on, I think I'll blow up now." It was as though now that we're in sight of this kid lying on the ground, I'm going to have to make a decision. It wasn't as though there was going to be a scramble over him. He's going to get his head kicked in by a ruck of players suddenly appearing on the scene and around him or anything like that. He wasn't obstructing the play. But the referee just wanted to stop the game. At that point, he stopped it at a point that suited him when the ball came over the halfway line. He wasn't stopping it when it was being pinged around across our back four and into the middle area. So yes, perhaps this is something that they're going to have to look at. Players are going to get around the rules. That's what rules are there for. They're rules to be got round, aren't they? And that's what professionals do. They'll always find a route out of something. And if that's where it's going, if players are then going to start faking injury in the hope that the referee will stop the game because it's going to be advantageous to their team, then at that point, when they know that there's nothing wrong with the player, perhaps then a card needs to come out. Certainly a warning But if the PGMOL, when they speak to managers and coaches and such like, and go to these meetings, if the head of the PGML just got a grip of it and said, this is something else we're going to be looking at, we're going to, you better stop it because someone, it'll either be a red card or a yellow card, then that's how he's going to nip in the bud. But you can guarantee they won't.
Okay, Mitch, thoughts on this? VAR, can it be used for things further down the pitch to stop this cheating?
Well, if you're going to feign head injury to gain an advantage, that's cheating. And it needs to be addressed. And if it's something that's going to start happening on a regular basis, could you imagine a scenario whereby in a game there's 3 or 4 of them and a referee eventually goes, play on, and somebody's lying there with a broken cheekbone? And he misses the real one. I know it's not terribly likely, you would hope, but these days you never know. Every time I think something that's not terribly likely is going to happen on a football pitch or not terribly likely is going to happen within a football club, it seems to happen. So the bottom line is if you're going to feign it on a regular basis, particularly when your team can gain an advantage, i.e. play is stopped because I have a head injury and you're rolling around like a fanny and you've not even been touched, it needs to be taken to task. Now, whether that's something that could be applied retrospectively to get hold of it, that would be one solution. But then what else will people then start to come back and say, we're going to apply this retrospectively? So that's not how the game should be done. So it needs to be dealt with on the spot. And we have a tool that would allow that to be dealt with on the spot. It's called VAR. Trouble is, it's operated by fannies. And so we've got a problem in the way that VAR works all around. If VAR was working the way it should, I would be the first to say, let's add that to the list of things we can get VAR to do. But until VAR is vaguely functional as a thing, asking them to do extra and asking for icing on the cake, you're putting your icing on the cake before the cake's even been baked, unfortunately. But yes, I get the point very much so, because it is cheating to gain an advantage. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, certainly is. Okay, what's your views on this, Stu?
Well, I'll disagree with Mitch because I don't see fannies being a problem, but the rest of the things I totally agree with.
Classic.
The first thing I was going to say was it does create the boy who cries wolf scenario. And Mitch just mentioned it there. It can be a case now, following on from what Mitch was saying is, like where does it stop? And you understand, okay, if we're doing it for that, then we're going to do it for this. But it's a form of cheating, and that's what they're trying to stamp out, isn't it? It's like the diving. They give an instant yellow card when they've been found to be diving. Now, this is a new law, new ruling that they've brought in, that if someone gets a head injury, you have to stop the game. And that's for the players' protection. And if people start abusing it, as Mitch said, there'll come a time when someone's going to get ignored and they genuinely do have a head injury. And the referee's going to think that either they've built up a reputation for it or he didn't see it. And the game doesn't get stopped. And as we all know, that those first few minutes are vital in any head injury. So really, they're spoiling it for themselves. So I don't know if you want to call it gamesmanship or cheating, but whatever it is, it's wrong. And to me, it should be an instant yellow card. And if it has to be retrospective, and they can prove that instance on Saturday, he didn't touch his head. We discussed that. There's no way he touched his head. And if it stamps it out like it should stamp out the diving in the penalty box, which it doesn't, but the yellow card is a deterrent, at least put something there to stop it, because it's for their benefit that the game gets stopped for that reason. And we don't want to be all doom and gloom merchants on this week of all weeks for Newcastle United, but it could be one of our players, it could be someone's player it just goes that too far. The incident gets overlooked because there's been too many people diving around and pretend to be injured when they're not. So I totally agree. It should be a yellow card, instant yellow card, or possibly even a red. because the game getting stopped for a head injury is for their benefit. It's really serious. So maybe they could say, right, we'll give you a straight red if you're feigning a head injury. If we can prove that you have not a head injury, you get suspended for 2 matches, even if they do that retrospectively.
Okay, George, just refresh my memory. What did you say on the fans forum about this?
Well, what I said was brilliant, Steve. That's all you need to know. It's important because I always go to the rugby example. There's not much rugby teachers, but on this they do. If there's an off-the-ball incident in rugby, it's nothing for the referee to take the teams back 50 metres to start again because the guy in the box has seen something off the ball. And that's really what we should be looking at in football as well. And the other thing is that until we get to this situation where the referee talks to the man in the box at Stockley Park and talks back, and everybody in the ground, on the television, in the nation, if you like, hears what they're saying, it'll never have any credibility at all for me. It'll always be a doubt that there's something not right there. That there's some. I mean, Mike Dean, for example, the things he said the other week on TV, that was corruption. I can think of some places where they'd be calling the coppers to come and have a word with him because of what he said. I didn't do this because I didn't want to upset me mate. Well, you know, that's terrible. So yes, I think they should look at other things to help the referee. That's what it's there for. And as regards the players that do get caught, yellow card or even a red card if it's bad enough.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Thanks for your point, Craig. Go on, Steve. You're on mute, I think, mate. So you've got a point to make. Go on. Oh, he's
pressed the wrong one.
He's pressed the wrong button. It's a classic. That's a classic. Go on, Stu. Were you going to say something, mate?
No, I wasn't. I was telling Steve he was on mute.
All right. That's a belter, absolute belter. He'd be kicking himself now. I'm trying to give him that second to come straight back on, but he
was worked up. He was getting something off his chest, wasn't he?
Oh, he was.
He definitely was. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let him hold that thought. I'm going to quickly play the ad, a section of the ads, which is quite short, and hopefully he gets back on. Here we go.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Okay, so I ran that short section of ads, Steve, because we could see you had a point to make, and I didn't want you to lose the momentum. Yep. So go for it, Steve. What did you want to say?
I pressed the wrong button. Sorry, guys. No, there was a couple of things. I mean, the Arsenal Everton game on Sunday. There was an incident where it was either Gabriel or Saliba got caught by one of the Everton players, and he went down like a stone. And it was right in front of the referee, and the referee just looked at him and went, "No, there's nothing wrong with him." When he got up, he was pointing to his eye and saying he'd pit. There was no mark, there was nothing, and you know, the way the referee reacted made him look like an idiot. George mentioned the rugby. What's interesting about the rugby is that the rugby have made a bit of a mess of their own VAR during this World Cup, where they've given this retrospective situation where you can actually get a yellow card and then 10 minutes later find out that you've been sent off because the man in the box decides to go and look at it again and again. So, you know, there's a couple of little instances there where, you know, we have the technology and the technology can be used, but we also show that the referee, if the referee's up for it and the referee's concentrating on the game, you'll see those incidents where an arm flails and doesn't catch somebody's face, but the player goes down. So I think there's an awful lot of that, you know, where the referee just not capable, not good enough. And something I think that Mitch will probably like to comment on as well. There was a situation in the American football on over the weekend where the referee, as we know, when the referee makes a decision and everybody needs to know about it. He goes to the crowd, he goes onto the microphone, and he speaks to the crowd, and he tells you exactly what his decision is and why he's made the decision. And there was a situation where on Sunday, one of the players of one of the teams walked over and started having a conversation while he was doing that, at which point the referee said, "Excuse me, I'm talking to America here." And I thought, what an excellent line, absolutely brilliant. So you're right, George. When you have that ability to communicate in that way to the crowd, and you can communicate to the TV audience at home and the TV audience worldwide, it can only be a good thing for the game.
Well, if you don't use it, people are bound to say, well, why aren't you using it?
Yeah.
And the inference is that you've got something to hide.
Yeah. Spot on.
I have to say, I think umpiring and refereeing in the NFL came up a notch when they had to stand and explain it out loud. I think every decision was then much more properly thought through.
Yeah.
And it does take a little time sometimes to get that decision, excuse me, particularly on very important plays. But I think they've shown now you get the right decision in something like 99.2% of the time. And the times that they don't get the right decision, they tend to be ones where there's really fine technicalities and moot points in the rules.
Yeah, and because they're being scrutinised, Mitch.
Yeah, because
they're being scrutinised, then they work as a team. The referees and the line judges and such like, they work as a team. What you find is, even now, after God knows how many years, the referees still referee the game on their own without any support from those guys that are now called assistant referees. That used to be called linesmen. And I remember when they did do a TV thing on, it was the old Wednesday night football program where they followed a referee, and he's in the changing room, and he actually said, "Don't flag for anything until I've told you. I'm the referee. You're just there to be the linesman." And I think that still goes on. I don't think they work as a team, or if they do, it certainly doesn't come over as that.
Well, Steve, the assistant referee, he's the one that gave the penalty to Wilson because the referee didn't give it initially. And he looked at the linesman assistant referee. So he's backed him and given it, but then they've let the fourth official, then they obviously got cleared in, but for the second one, they let the fourth official sway his decision. And everyone knew as soon as he went to the monitor, that wasn't going to be a penalty.
Yeah.
Now, it should be a clear and obvious error. And the referee hadn't made a clear and obvious error because the guy handled the ball.
Yeah.
We discussed that in the professionals about the velocity and stuff. But listen to the lads. I agree with Steve that the rugby seem to have it more right than most. But there's one thing that we've been consistent on throughout since VAR got brought in, and it's VAR, nothing wrong with it. It's the people operating it. And there's one word that we're all crying out for, and that's transparency.
Yeah.
If we can hear the discussion that's going on, then as I think Mitch just said there, the more likely to realise that the spotlight's on them and they'll have to get it right. We can take into account there'll be human error. Of course there will. There isn't everything where there's humans involved. But if you know you're being scrutinised and people can hear you, there's less wordings that's been said to try and sway the referee. Are you sure about this? What about this? Because sometimes the show angles, like we look at that Arsenal game yesterday, was he really offside, that Martinelli? Now, yes, I'm a bit sour because I had him first goal and it got choked off. But they give someone else offside that wasn't Martinelli, and that's why they said it was offside. He's on the other side of the pitch. But then there's how many instances where there was one when Man United, was it against us when they were through? No, it was against Man City last season. And they said he wasn't interfering, and he was about 3 yards offside running at the goalkeeper. Of course he was interfering. So that's the consistency or the lack of consistency that we've got, and that's why we need the transparency. And if the players can get yellow cards, and possibly the officials should as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great question, Craig. Thanks for that, mate.
Yeah.
We've given it.
I did reply to Craig.
I did.
I did.
No, I did, but I saw your reply. I saw your reply as well, Stu. So, but I thought it was such a good question and so well written. I thought it was worth discussing on the fans forum last night, which we did briefly, and obviously giving you lads the opportunity to have a chat about it as well. Okay, we're nearly halfway through the show, so we'll play the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com. And they've got a website, which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com. Don't forget as well, Monday to Friday, 7 till 9, you can catch me and Rye and Macca on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. It is on DAB radio, smart speakers, the app and online. Just search for the Toon Radio, the Cat Radio or the Red Radio and you'll be able to tune in 7 till 9. We've had a lot of fun. We're into the 4th week already and it has been early mornings, but it's been a good laugh. Also, the Kieran Trippier signed print is up for grabs. We've got 29 tickets left at £1. Get yourself on nufcmatters.com for that. Gibbo and Supermac, we did a cracking pre-match apparently the other day. I didn't get to it, but Gibbo is back with Frank Clark Thursday, December the 7th at the Irish Centre. Tickets are £15, and you can get your tickets for that at nufcmatters.com. And don't forget as well the T-shirt which John has designed. I've never seen a Maccaman Milan T-shirt with the Champions League dates on the back. Is available at nufcmatters.com as well. Paul Tweedy, good evening, mate. And thank you, as always, for your support, but also thanks for your question. He says, hi, Steve. I've got a question for the lads. How far do they think Newcastle will go in the Champions League this season? He said, I am going for the quarter-finals. So, just a reminder, in case you've been living under a stone, Newcastle are back in the UEFA Champions League starting tonight in Milan, and they are in the group of death. It has been named, and we are in there with PSG, Dortmund, and AC Milan. So, Paul's question's simple, Mitch. How far do you think we'll go in the Champions League?
It's a good question. We've got the potential to do whatever we want because we proved last season we can go toe-to-toe with the team that eventually won it, with a team that's won it recently in Liverpool, with teams that have progressed all the way to the final recently. So there's nothing we should be frightened of. When you looked at all the potential draw combinations, it was quite clear there was more likely an outcome of a group of death and it would involve us somewhere. Because I'm also quite sure most of the teams in pot 1 and 2 that could have drawn us would be looking at pot 4 going, God, I don't want them. I don't want to trip to St James's Park and don't want them coming with their tails up if they've just thumped somebody in the Premier League. They've seen how we play last season. And I think we have the genuine ability to upset a few people. Of all the group of death combinations, I don't actually think ours is as bad as it initially seems either. We've certainly got nothing to be frightened of. Quarterfinals, or do I have to call it the round of 8 these days? Is certainly well within our ability. And I don't think that's, in saying that, I don't think I'm overstating what we're capable of. We know how well we can play on one day. If we show a run of form like we have done last season, there is nothing in these teams for us to fear. And we're going to have a damn good time in the process. So quarterfinals, I think, is not an unreasonable shout. I think I'm with Paul on that one.
Okay. George, are you agreeing with your son? Do you think Newcastle can go as far as the quarters?
I am, and why should we limit it to that? To be perfectly honest, we are in a good position as the virtual unknown quantity, and the lads are right. Nobody's going to want to come to St James's Park on a cold winter's night and have to do something special because they know that's just a recipe for disaster. So yes, I'm confident enough to think if Newcastle play the way that Newcastle can play, and we know how they play, that none of those teams should frighten us at all. We should be able to keep pressure on them as they are on us. I don't see any difference between keeping Manchester City quiet to keeping any of those teams quiet. And we do it quite effectively, and I don't see why we shouldn't at all. And I'll be honest, I'd be disappointed if we didn't at least reach the quarterfinals, because I think that's what we could go for, and that's how confident I feel if the lads play the way they can, and they certainly did towards the back end of last year when they pushed us into the Champions League position. Then that's what will come, and. We've got some surprise packages in the sense that the Tonali is young player but well seasoned in Europe. Trippier is well seasoned in Europe with his former clubs. So we're not totally bereft of experience. In fact, far from it. And I can only see people like Botman and others just grown in stature. The big stadiums aren't going to frighten people like that. He's as cool as a cucumber. And that's a big thing to have in these big games. So, yeah, I'm with Neil and Paul. The quarterfinals, not a bad shout at all.
Okay, quarterfinals seems to be the prediction. Stu, you're often known for your 3-1 prediction with a game. So, are you going to be as predictable as the lads? Are you going quarters? Or are you going to go a bit further?
Well, I'm normally known as the one to be the most positive, but I think in the groups we've got nothing to lose because we were the lowest seeds. And I don't think we'll go under the radar because of the exposure the Premier League gets. And I agree with George. I don't think many teams will want to come to play us with the crowd behind them and stuff like that. And I'm sure we will bloody a few noses. And I expect from this group, I predict from this group that we'll get double figures, whether that's 10, 11 points, 12. I mean, I don't know. I'd say err on the side of caution and say, well, let's say we get 10 points. That should be enough to get us through. But if we're being realistic, a lot would have to go in our favour for us to get beyond the last 16. Because if we go through in second place, we'll be playing a group winner. Because that's how the draw gets done. And if we can't then play at that stage, still can't play an English team. So that rules out the possibilities of Man City, Man United, if they get through. Arsenal, they should get through, but we can't play any of them. So we're starting, it narrows it down who we could actually play. And you'd expect the teams like Real Madrid and Bayern Munich to win their leagues. And as much as we're on an upward curve, I don't think we're at that level yet where we could go toe-to-toe with them over 2 legs. I think they're a lot more streetwise than us in the European competitions. So if the draw was in our favour, something which it wasn't this time, but perversely it could actually work in our favour because the expectations are low. There's always a surprise in a group, and it could be like one of the big guns don't win their group and gets qualified through in second place. And then if we were to be drawn against the team that did win that group, that gives us a sporting chance to get into the quarterfinals. But then that just means if you get to that stage, you really are drawn against 7 of the top European teams, aren't you? And I still think we're a season 2 behind where we can realistically go into these games and think, right, we're going to beat these over 2 legs. One-offs is a different matter. We've proven that over the years. But over 2 legs against the likes of Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bayern Munich, Man City in the quarterfinals, I think that's just stretching expectations too much. But I'm just delighted that we're in there and that we're in the Champions League, and not going to be 20 years before we get in again. But I do expect us to get the last 16. Long way to say last 16, that's sorry.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. Just before I come to you, Steve, I just want to see Craig Lee's messaged, and I might have a senior moment and completely forget what he said, but he just said, I watched tonight's show, which was last night's show, the Fans Forum. He went great as always. He says, if you said if VAR intervened, it would take up more time. The game was stopped for 2 minutes, more than enough time for a word in the ref's ear to stop the fantasy injury. He was on the floor for a bit before the ref blew. VAR would have the replay almost instantly. That could nip it in the bud quicker than allowing the physios, etc. on, which is a good point, Craig. Yeah, honestly, Craig, really good stuff. And if anybody else ever wants to make a comment like that underneath the video when we're off air, do it, because I check it, Stu checks it on a regular basis as well, especially the shows he does. But we can always bring stuff up later on in the show, and that was a really good one. Anyway, Steve, back to Champions League. How far do you say we're going?
I'll go the counter argument to Stu, and I'll say, well, we'll win the league, we'll win our group. That's the easiest way to avoid the top 7.
And then we'll probably get the Bayern Munich.
Let's be one of the top 8. Let's face it, Man United are not going to get anywhere in their group, or they're never in the group of Barcelona with Bayern Munich. But no, seriously, there's no reason why we can't. You look at who we've got. You look at tonight's game, and you look at Milan, and you think, God, they've just been turned over for the 5th time by Inter. That tells you an awful lot about how badly they are defensively, and how probably showing a confidence they should be. Up front, they've got a 36-year-old in Giroud, who, if he's not good enough to be playing for Chelsea in the state that Chelsea are in at the moment, it says an awful lot. They've also got Perisic, who plays for them. They've got Tomori at the back again. They've got Loftus-Cheek in midfield, all ex-Chelsea. There's no reason why we can't turn these over tomorrow. Then you go to PSG and you look at them. There's a team that isn't pulling up any trees. At the weekend, they got beat at home off Nice. They've got Mbappe scoring goals, but they're leaking them like a sieve at the other end. What does that say about them? And again, we can get at them, especially when they come to our place. We can certainly give them a shake. Dortmund are a strange kettle of fish as well. Poor start of the season. Had a good win away from home on Saturday night. But it wasn't it might have looked as 4-2, but they played against 10 men for the last 15, 20 minutes, and it wasn't one of those games where you'd say they dominated either. So there's nothing there that really frightens us in terms of who we've got. And you describe it as the group of death. For me, it's a group of life, because that's what we want, isn't it? When we wanted to get into the Champions League, we wanted to pit ourselves against the best. We didn't want to get the also-rans and say, oh yeah, we're going to Europe and we're off to here, there and everywhere. We wanted to play the top teams, and we've got the second top team in Germany, we've got one of the top teams in Italy, and we've got the top team in France. And that's who we're competing against. And it's going to be fantastic. I see no reason why we can't get to at least the quarterfinals. And once it gets to that point, guys, it turns into a lottery. You've got teams that are competing on all fronts in their own league as well. You've got injuries, you've got suspensions, all sorts of things come into the equation. And if the pressure's off, and I question whether our slow start has something to do with the fact that we were doing okay until a draw was made. We did all right against Villa. The draw was made, and then our minds have gone off it. And I think perhaps we've been concentrating on that a little bit too much. Once we get we get that out of our system tomorrow, or tonight rather, and who knows where it can take us.
Do you think it's a bit like the cup final, Steve? Do you think do you think, like, you know, because I heard a journalist in the press conference ask Eddie Howe that, and it was, do you think that's the reason we've had that little blip at the start of the season? You know, not just the fact that it was against Manchester City, Liverpool in particular, but we had Aston Villa and Brighton, who were also, you know, constantly on our tails chasing Europe. But is it been a little bit of a blip because your mind is on the Champions League? It started to surround Eddie Howe and the players a bit more and the fans.
Yeah, I think quite possibly it is. I think it's one of those things that gets into your head. You know, you've got this to look forward to, but there's an air of trepidation, isn't there, going into this? And the players are all thinking, well, what's this? This is a new adventure for the vast majority of them. Tonoli, I suppose, being the exception along with Bruno. I mean, Tonoli played 12 games in the Champions League last year. You know, more than any other player in the AC team. That's what happens. Players are, you know, it's going to be a long season. I think players possibly hold back a little bit, rein back. I think that, and from a coaching perspective, I think Eddie's possibly had his eye on this game more than anything, although he denied it at the weekend and said he takes one game at a time. Well, which manager is going to say anything other than he takes one game at a time? Because that's the way you're supposed to do it. But you're bound to be, you know, it's on your mind all the time. The organisation behind the scenes, you know, there's so much been going on. There's so much that Eddie will have been dragged into in terms of where we're going to go. What do you want to do with training? What time's the flight going to be? Which kit are we going to be wearing? What do I have to do? What's the protocols for Europe that I don't know about? Where can I stand? Well, can my mate stand next to us in the dugout? You know, all of these questions will be thrown at them. There's an awful lot of things that are different. I mean, if you see the rule book for UEFA games compared to Premier League games, it's unbelievable. And not only that, but the club has to be absolutely spot on. In the rule book for the Champions League, you get fined for every single thing that miss out. And somebody comes and they go through everything you do with a fine-tooth comb over that 3 days that they're here. And if they spot anything and they put a cross against you, it's €1,000 here, it's €2,000 there, it's €50 that. Anything that they spot, that they actually have a team of people who come and do that for you. You know, this is what you. It's a money making exercise for UEFA, and that they'll do as much as they can to take money off you in terms of what your prize money is, because they try and nab you at the other end. And so there's an awful lot of pressure on the clubs. You just see the work we've had to do for the dugouts, for example. You know, this is the way that UEFA operating. It's a different ball game for us now, and it's bound to get to Eddie Howe. It's bound to get to the players. It's bound to seep through, because they'll have had conversations. They'll have had team meetings. They'll be told what they can and can't do, where they can and can't go, what it's going to be like. And they'll also be hearing from the experiences of the likes of Bruno and Tonali, etc., who've played in Europe in those big games, and Botman to a certain extent, and obviously Kieran Trippier. But it's a new adventure for the rest of the squad. So I think it probably has. I think it's had an impact, Steve. But you know what? Let's be the dark horses. Let's go out there without any fear. Certainly the fans are going out there with any fear. They're going out there to enjoy themselves, and I think Newcastle United can go out there and upset the apple cart. And if you're upsetting the apple cart in the so-called group of death, then everybody will start looking at you, won't they?
Yeah, of course they will. Okay, this is a pre-record, but we are looking ahead to tonight's game against AC Milan. 5 changes at the weekend, Mitch. Are we expecting them to ring the changes tonight?
I think that the fact he didn't use certain players from the bench points to the indication about where he's going with team selection for tonight. And I think he obviously felt he didn't need to. I can't see him then asking some of those players to go to the well for 90 plus minutes again on Tuesday, when he's got the luxury of being able to make changes and bring players in and change the formation. Or not to change the formation, just change the personnel and freshen it up a little bit. I think the lack of substitutions indicates where he's going with that. Milan, having caught up with their game at the weekend, that there was a capitulation there.
Yeah.
The last 20 minutes in particular, they can be got at. And we need to have the players in place who can get at them. And I think he looked at getting the job done against Brentford to give him a bit of freedom to play who he wants against Milan, and didn't have to risk anybody. He didn't have to make wholesale changes to get the result against Brentford. So I think we now go to San Siro full of confidence and as fit as we can be.
Okay. George, your thoughts on tonight's selection? What's he going to do? I mean, obviously, Wilson was into the team at the weekend, scored that penalty, the match-winning penalty. Is he going to bring Isak back in, do you think? Is he going to change things dramatically, or is he just going to go Tonali in for Anderson, Isak in for Wilson, maybe, and that's it?
That's a possibility because, as Neil said, it's more interesting looking at what substitutes he didn't use at the weekend or to what he did use, and Isak not being there. And the other thing is, Ibrahimovic will have done the dressing room talk with Isak because he loves Isak. And he's going to be saying to the Milan players, you've got to watch him this, you've got to watch him that. Smashing. Thank you very much. That saves anyhow talking to Isak. And Tonali, well, he'd be desperate to have a go at his old mates, won't he? And they're going to try and kick him off the park, which could all go in our favour. No, I don't think there'll be wholesale changes. I think there'll be tinkering. I think Tonali will come in probably for Anderson, although I've got no aversion to letting Anderson have some European experience if that's possible. But I don't think he'll make wholesale changes. It'll be tinkering, and the possibility is, you see, it was revealing, I thought, that he let Callum Wilson play 90 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, it was interesting as well because he was kept back. He was training on his own, and then allowed to train with the main squad as well before they headed off to Italy. So that was an interesting thing as well.
And the whole 90 minutes I thought were very revealing. So I think Isak will be a shock for them. I think and it'd be a good shock for us. I think the two lads playing wide at the moment, Gordon and Bonds, will upset them for their pace. They've got pace to burn, both of them. So no, not a lot of changes. 2 or 3 maybe at most, and very predictable ones. So I don't see a wholesale change.
Okay, Stu, what's your thoughts on the team selection for tonight?
Well, just to clarify, the Champions League draw was done after the Liverpool game, so it didn't affect that outcome or the Man City game, but it might have played on the Brighton game.
I don't think what the journalist was trying to say, and I correct us if I'm wrong, Steve, but as well, I think it's just the excitement that's built around the whole Champions League. I think the summer of talk of the Champions League, people having the Champions League as their ringtones, people talking about who we're going to get, it almost suffocated the whole start of the season, because although we had big league games to talk about, everybody was talking about the Champions League. I think that's what the journalist meant. That's certainly what I meant anyway as well.
Yeah, but I think with the mentality that they've got in the squad,
and
the way they manage the coach and everything else, I think they're going to thrive. I really do. I think and if this is what they've been missing a step, it's just mainly the Brighton game. To be fair, Liverpool was a freak result. Had we won that, things would have been totally different. The season would have looked different else. And we should have won it, but going into tonight's game, I think honestly, imagine it was either any of us. It's a game that you want to be playing in, and these are top professionals, and a lot of them have got a good few years, the best year ahead of them. You know, this is an opportunity to make a statement and say, yes, we belong on this stage, and who better do it against a creaking old giant like AC Milan? So I think we will win. I'll still echo what I said on Sunday, even though I was desperately recovering from a weekend with Dr. Neil. I think we'll win 3-0. And if we get an early goal, silence their crowd, and then we'll just keep hitting them on the break, because we've got the pace and their defence doesn't have. Regarding Tonali, George just said he'd be desperate to get it amongst his own players. But we had a semi-final in Cardiff a few years back, and we thought Nicky Butt would do that. But at the end of the game,
different mentality. Different mentality.
I hope you're right. No, I think you're right, George. I think he's gonna, if he does start, if he is fully fit and he starts, he doesn't want to say, well, look, I've just got beat a few, I've left here and I've got beat. He's weakened their team, and there wouldn't have been an outcry or an outpouring in the Italian press if he hadn't weakened their team. So if he weakens their team, he strengthens ours, and that can only be a psychological blow for us. So I really do expect us to get 3 goals tonight.
Okay, Steve.
Talk about pressure in Champions League. That's what you asked.
Yeah.
We said, do you think there's pressure within the club for the Champions League? Anyone who watched the 4-part documentary, when the last 2 episodes were just all about the Champions League, getting to the Champions League. How many times was the Champions League mentioned in that documentary towards the end, as we were getting closer and closer? Amanda talked about it. My dad talked about it. Al Ramayan talked about it. It was the hot topic. It was, and so yes, that was the sort of pressure that was in with the club, because they could see the financial reward at the top end of the club, and I'm sure it filtered down, and the pressure was on Eddie Howe, and I'm sure that's continued. I'm sure that conversation's continued. As for the game, formation wise, you know what? I'd keep Longstaff in. I'd play him alongside Tonali. I'd shove Bruno a little bit further forward into that, more behind the front players. Would I play Barnes and Gordon? Possibly one of the two. I might consider playing Isak and Wilson with Isak wide on the left, just to shake it up, because I don't want to think that if I was Eddie Howe, I'd be thinking that Pioli has looked at my team and knows that it's always either Wilson or Isak, Wilson or Isak. If I was Eddie Howe, I might go Wilson and Isak just to shake it up. The question then is, do I play Miggy or do I play Anthony Gordon down the right? I would probably, at this stage in the game, say I'd play Anthony Gordon just for the form that he's in. He's a wasp. He's the sort of player, he'd be a bit like Bellamy in Europe. They'll hate him. They'll absolutely hate him because he'd be getting in their faces. He doesn't get in your face physically like Bellamy, but he's a wasp in terms of he's always there in front of you. He's always there rattling your ankles, that type of thing. And you know what? He's not the only one, because Callum Wilson can shake up a few people like that when he's got his back to goal. And the likes of Tomori, they'll not be relishing a game against Callum Wilson. And Callum Wilson can turn Tomori, time and time again. So I think that Eddie might have some surprises in store. But you know what? You look at that formation and you'll probably find that the one that Eddie produces is a totally different one to the one I've just selected.
Okay, lads, it's come to that time. Predictions. Mitch, we'll start with you, mate. How do you see the game going? What's your prediction for Milan versus Newcastle?
I'm going to take a draw.
Okay.
I'll take any away draw in the Champions League. But I do think they can be got at. I just think we may start a little tentatively. I hope not. I hope we just get stuck into them and do a normal thing. But I'll take a draw. Okay,
well, I went 1-1 on the fans forum last night, so you're in the same mindset as me. George, you've had another a bit time to think about it. Are you still going for a win?
Yes, definitely. 2-0. I think that's what I said.
Okay, 2-0. George is going. It doesn't matter. It's still a win. Stu, are we going for the penman?
No, going for 3-0. I think we'll beat them 3-0. Hopefully, I'm not doing AC Milan a disservice, but I think they'll be the group's whipping boys. And I believe we'll beat them home and away. And tomorrow will be our statement. It'll be the time these boys become men. And they'll relish playing in front of a big crowd like that and show how good they are. And it's a big pitch, big crowd. And that's where I believe we'll have Gordon, Miggy and Isak up front for the pace.
So 3-1 is going to be known as the Premier League penman.
Yeah, that's right.
The 3-0 is going to be known as the European penman prediction.
I've done both of them. I've backed them both. But I'm just getting
Edge.
It's good. It's good of you to have a European prediction, though. So there we go. You're going to stick with that now. Steve, your prediction.
I think there'll be goals. I think there'll be goals all around. I think we'll concede, and I think we'll score. I can see this game being quite open, and I'm going to go for a 3-2 Newcastle win.
3-2 Newcastle win. That will be a hell of a start to our European adventure. Lads, as always, it has been a pleasure. And from our perspective, let's just hope it's a good game. Let's hope there's no trouble. Let's hope all the Newcastle fans get back in one piece after having a great time. Safe travels, everybody who's over there. Enjoy the game tonight. And thanks to Mitch, thanks to George, thanks to Stu, and thanks to Steve. I'll be back tomorrow with a Premier League show. It'll be a pre-record with Melly back Thursday for a little bit of a post-mortem with Super Mac and Gibbo on tonight's European adventures. Enjoy the game. Take care, lads.
Night,
Take care,
everybody.
All the best.
Enjoy the match.